Welcome to the Church of Mabus radio show. It's Friday night. It's 7:05 p.m. Central. This is United Public Radio 107.7 FM New Orleans. We got Wham here representing.
Hey,
She's got cool weather up there.
it hasn't always been that way, though.
Finally, though, right?
Finally.
It's a little
pretty
cooler.
suddenly, too. It was like summer on Sunday, and Monday it was fall. It was like, just like that.
And we got Mona Sobhani here tonight. Proof of spiritual phenomenon, a neuroscientist discovery of the infallible, and did I say that right? Ineffable mysteries of the universe. Ineffable.
Yeah, you got it.
Okay.
It's a hard word. It's a hard title.
It's it's great to have you here. And I've enjoyed your.
Uh-oh.
Yeah,
Oh, Jeffrey, you got frozen. Frozen, dude.
Book and I saw a fade out.
There is.
I don't know what happened.
Yeah,
Everybody faded out. But anyway, I know one of the prefaces is about a funeral. What can you tell us about that? And I know it has to do with rigid people not being open to spiritual or paranormal phenomenon.
I didn't quite catch the question.
Oh, I was just going to say, in your preface for the funeral, what is that about? It's about the scientists that aren't open to this kind of phenomenon.
Oh, so the story is about how I was transformed from a very strict, hard-nosed, skeptical neuroscientist, and how this journey kind of cracked me open to be more receptive to the possibility of spirituality or things that we can't explain and measure with traditional science. And so throughout the book, I tell about the story of just how I end up changing. And so at some point it was kind of metaphorical, but I thought, I need to kind of have funeral, like a death and rebirth. It was like that. So that's why I titled the preface in that way, kind of like a death of the old me, so the new me could be reborn.
So what started you with spiritual phenomenon? Did something happen? What was the catalyst to open your mind?
Yeah. Well, for me, I think of it like a forest. Like there's all these different paths, and everyone has, a different path. And mine was that I'm Persian, so in my culture, we use coffee grounds, kind of like tea leaves. Like you have them in the cup, you can dry them, and if you are lucky to have a reader, someone who's intuitive, they can kind of look into the cup and intuit things about your, past, present, or future through symbolism. And so my grandmother and my mother were skilled in that. I could never reconcile it with my science, but it was always there in the background of our, family parties and whatnot. And when I was in grad school, my mom started, just absentmindedly reading for me. And then I just noticed that she was more right than she was wrong, and things that she would say would come true. And even though I was a neuroscientist at that, I was trained to think skeptically and understand that our brains are like coincidence detectors. We're always looking for coincidence and meaning. So I was careful, but she read for me for over 10 years. And after a while, it just became like indisputable. And though I couldn't explain it with science, I knew that it worked. And through that experience, I was already a little bit open, but the funny thing is I was skeptical, and I lived in cognitive dissonance. Like that was the only kind of unexplained phenomena I would accept just because I was familiar with it, but I was still, I still didn't accept anything else. And then I kind of had this existential crisis. And, it's one of those things where it's like, I'm not exactly sure what was wrong, but I wasn't happy. And like, I wasn't fulfilled. And my mom had seen this relationship coming into my life. And it did, but she saw it being positive, and then we broke up. So in my mind, that was definitely not positive. And so after that, at this like critical point in my life, it kind of destroyed me. Like I was just, like, what is the point of living? For the first time ever, I was pretty depressed and felt despair and like couldn't muster an ounce of hope for the life of me. And then some of my friends were like, why don't we, like trying to cheer me up. Like, why don't we go to this psychic intuitive lady we know here in LA? She's really good. And at first I was like, oh no, I don't want to do that. But then we went, and she was really good. And she mentioned to me in passing, things about reincarnation and karmic lessons or soul lessons. And I didn't understand any of that. I'd never heard anything about that before. So it kind of went over my head, but I wrote it down. And then later, much later, months later, I came across the spiritual framework again when I was listening to a podcast. And I thought, oh, this is like this. I've heard this before. This sounds familiar. And so that's when I kind of got more curious, like to look into it, to kind of, and not that I believed it, I just wanted to understand it in a way. So that was kind of where it started.
And was that the breakup was one of the two events that changed everything? Or is that two other events?
Yeah, that's one of the events. The other event was in 2016. My mom saw, she was doing a reading for me, and she saw something like 5 weeks in advance. She kept saying, "Oh, I think you're going to get really, really bad news." And which she never would never give me bad news, actually. But this one, she was like very serious about it. And she's like, I just feel like I need to warn you. And so she did that every week for 5 weeks. I would go back. She would say the same thing. And then finally, I found out one of my professors from my graduate program at USC was killed by one of our students. And it was a really unusual situation that happened. And I had worked with this professor, on my dissertation. And so it was very upsetting. But what was even more upsetting was that my mom had seen it way in advance. And that was like, I never paid that much attention to the coffee before. But then after that, I was like, oh, I was a little afraid of the universe. I was a little bit like, is there such thing as fate or destiny? Or what is the nature of time? Do we not have an understanding of reality? Because how could this be? It didn't make sense with my understanding of science, like what I knew about physics. So that was the first one, but I didn't do anything with it. I just was like, kind of like a seed was planted. And then the second event was when I think of it as like a stool, like all the legs of the stool were knocked out with that last event. And I was cracked open to like anything because I was just so miserable. And
where does Chelsea Handler fit in? I'm familiar with her, not a lot, but I've definitely heard of her.
Yeah. So Chelsea Handler was that's the podcast. So we had been going through these intuitive psychic readings. They were mentioning the spiritual framework I didn't understand, and completely unrelated, I was listening to Chelsea Handler's book. It was called "Life Will Be the Death of Me." That was it was published in 2019. So she had this limited series podcast, like 6 episodes on the book. And it was mostly about therapy and personality tests and things like that. But one of the episodes, she had Laura Lynn Jackson on, who is a psychic medium. And Laura Lynn Jackson started describing this spiritual framework. And I kind of just turned it up, and I'm like, oh, this sounds really familiar. Oh, this is what the intuitives had been talking about. She described Earth as a school. You come here to learn lessons. You have soul groups, karma, etc. And I just jotted it down because, I was like, oh, maybe I'll understand what the intuitives were talking about, which I didn't understand before. And then on the podcast, they also mentioned this book called Many Lives, Many Masters, written by Dr. Brian Weiss, who's a psychiatrist. Yes. Yeah. And so they didn't say what it was about. They're just like, oh, this is such a good book. Everyone should read it. It's a psychiatrist case study. So I ordered it, and it arrived, and I read it, and I was just like, like, what am I even reading? It's a past life regression story. But I didn't even know what past life regression was. So I was very confused about what I was reading. But I read it and it was really interesting. And then he also talks about the same spiritual framework. And so I was like, wow, this is like the third time I'm learning about this framework. But this time it's from like a well-credentialed psychiatrist. So that was the tipping point too, of like, at that point I hadn't been reading anything or like researching. I was just kind of whatever, living, and things were falling into my lap. But after that book, I thought, this is really interesting and weird. And so I just started doing a lot of reading about past life regression, reincarnation, near-death experiences, psychic phenomena, basically whatever I can get my hands on to update myself.
And well, one of the big reasons we do the show is because of having spiritual experiences, or what you would call paranormal experiences. We both had
Uh-oh.
plan to phase out. I hope that's not my internet. I hope that's a StreamYard thing. Might be a storm outside. But anyway, I was going to say one of the things that interests me is how trauma opens us to these experiences. There's a puppy making a crazy noise in there. Hopefully it stops. But anyway, how trauma can open you up to these experiences. For instance, when I was 17, I had testicular cancer. I had to go through chemo and all that crap. And then I went through chemo and everything got, oh no, don't do.
He has an interesting life.
Yeah. There's a lot of dogs here, but I'm going to have to go shut the door.
Dog, do you have your baby pig? Do you have your baby pig?
A pig.
Oh, that's cute.
You want it? No, the window is usually down the curtain, and she's probably, a bulldog is probably barking at her reflection, and that's she'll see it and then do it. Someone could be out there. Zara, get your butt down. But anyway, they're usually quiet, but sometimes they're not. But anyway, I had testicular cancer, and then I was healed and all that stuff, much suffering. And then a year or so later, my dad died, and I started to have spiritual experiences from seeing things in the sky that were unusual. We've done a lot of shows with serious people about UFOs, like Stanton Friedman, nuclear physicist. He's passed now, God rest his soul. Had on Air Force captains and different people that are powerful that know about this kind of stuff. And also saw beings of light many times with my naked eye. And it's always fascinating how, what a lot of people I talk to, how trauma or pain or suffering can open up your senses to these experiences. What like X-Men kind of mutant freak accidents and things like that. But So what are some of the things that you talk about when it comes to bringing on the spiritual phenomenon, or what are ways that people experience? Have you gotten to trauma? I mean, what are some of the other things?
Yeah, that's so when I was reading about, actually I was reading about it, but I also spoke to the people who run the Windbridge Research Center. So on that podcast episode I mentioned, Laura Lynn Jackson mentioned that she signs up for studies to let scientists like record her brain activity while she's reading. So I found this center that does like quintuple blinded studies with psychic mediums. And I read their papers, and then I reached out to them, and they actually do a lot of survey research with people who are very intuitive or have connection to the other side. And they did find that most of them had some sort of extreme trauma in their early childhood. And so I talked to them a little bit about that, but not extensively. So I'm definitely not an expert in that. They probably know a lot more about that than I do. But I did, through the past life regression literature that I was reading, I did find that altered state, like regression regression, and any other kind of altered state like psychedelics or breath work or meditation or whatever, that kind of state opens you up to I think of them as kind of the intersection of where personal healing, the transpersonal or paranormal, and the spiritual all collide in those states. And so to me, those are really interesting to look at because that's where it all comes together. So I'm not a super expert in that, but I have heard anecdotally from their research that people who experience trauma, I mean, from a neuroscience perspective, neuroscience doesn't even believe in these abilities. So there's definitely no explanation for why that would be the case. And I couldn't speculate.
Well, what are some of your experiences?
I haven't had super crazy personal experiences, and I got asked this question this week on another interview, and I was like, I don't want to tempt the universe and say I haven't, because now I'm gonna like have a man standing over my bed probably tonight. But luckily I'm not sensitive in that way, but I do have a friend who I write about in the book who's very sensitive. Actually, I have a lot of friends now that are intuitive and sensitive because of this path. But my craziest experiences have been really through them. And so, for example, one of my girlfriends is just sensitive, and her mother too. So they're always, she has always been telling us, we've been friends since we were very young, and she would just offhandedly say, like, oh, I just saw, a ghost walk by, or my mother and I, last night. She has a lot of stories from her home, like, I felt my dad over my shoulder. I yelled at him for coming into my room without knocking, turn around, no one was there. So a lot of those kinds of stories. So she came over to my new apartment years ago, and I was trying to talk to her, like whatever, update her and stuff. And she kind of wasn't paying attention. She kept looking off into the corner. And I was like, oh, you're not, like I was accusing her, like, you're not paying attention to me. You're being rude. And she's like, oh, I'm so sorry. It's just that a man keeps walking back and forth in your hallway. And I ran over, like I had just moved in. So I didn't even, I wasn't even comfortable in the apartment yet. And I came over. Of course, I didn't see anything, but she's like, yeah, sorry, I was really distracted. It was just like, it was walking back and forth. And so she has seen that entity multiple times, and we ended up nicknaming him Bob, and we just called him my invisible roommate. But I've never seen him. In relation to like knowledge, so I have another friend who is extremely, extremely intuitive, and he's very connected to me. So I've had a lot of, I think he alone has validated for me beyond reasonable doubt that there's something, that at least we're all connected, and that there's more information than we can just perceive with our five senses. Because he there's been many times when, like, I'm having a really, really, really terrible day, and he will text me, and we don't talk that frequently, so it's not like we're talking every day and he's like asking me how I'm doing, but he'll text me out of the blue and say, I just feel like I need to ask you how you're doing, or at least like I hear your guides, like he says he can hear my spirit guides, whatever that means, like telling me I need to call you. And then he'll call me, and then he'll say things about my day that there's no way that he could have known, like he'll just be like, oh, that thing that you were thinking about in the shower, they're saying like this, or like they're telling you to stop wearing black all week, or like he'll just know everything about my entire week. And so I don't know, those kinds of experiences. So I haven't had any direct ones myself. I'd be interested to, I would like to see a light being, but I'm kind of a little bit of a scaredy cat. So I don't know. I don't know if I'm ready to ask for experiences like that.
Yeah, to prepare yourself, you can watch Ron Howard's Cocoon. That's a good one, a good movie. But Jeffrey Cripple, did I say that right? Cripple gave you a blurb in here. That's a pretty good score for sure. And one thing he mentions is that you get into secret government psychic research programs. He also has an interesting book about mutants. I remember that one, Mutants and Mystics. I was just looking it up. But there's
Yeah.
I hear some bad feedback. I don't know what that is, but it's gone now. But I heard me echo. But anyway, what are some of the government research programs?
Yes. So when I was looking into psychic phenomena, I think, the co-founder of the Windbridge Research Center recommended a huge reading list, and on it was it turns out there was this program funded by the US government for 25 plus years to investigate psychic phenomena. And they used really gifted psychics. It was called Stargate, and funded by NASA, the CIA, Army Intelligence. And it was run by 3 physicists. So he gave me information on that, some of the books they had written. So I went and read the books, and then I found the actual studies they had published, and then I reached out and spoke to 2 of them. But the program, are you familiar with it? Have you heard of? I'm sure. Yeah. So it's, and I was blown away. That was one of the first, I think, things that were more scientifically founded that I read that impressed me. And I know that some people don't like the Stargate project for whatever reason, as I've come to understand. But when I read it, I thought it was impressive. But they use these really extremely gifted psychics to, the CIA would give them just latitude and longitude coordinates of somewhere in the world and ask them to, draw their impressions or explain what they perceived, and it would match. It would be very accurate. They would have judges rate them against other targets, and it was above chance accuracy. And then it ended up being so good that they made a whole program out of it to train other people to do it in the Army. So they had this whole psychic spies group in the Army in this training program. So it became operationalized. And I've done research. I've had studies funded by the government too, and I know firsthand that it's really hard to get them to fund anything, and then it's doubly hard to get them to continue funding something. So when I was reading about it, I was like, all of these organizations funded it and kept funding it for 25 years. There must have been positive results. Otherwise, it's hard to get things funded and for programs to last that long, because they review everything, every single year. They do their budgets every year. So and then I read the papers, and I was pretty impressed personally by it, but I know some people are not really that into it. But I thought it was the first round of more scientific type studies that I read that I thought was pretty convincing.
And then I know you got into the participants in these studies. And we had recently Dr. Richard Allen Miller on, who he's been on Coast to Coast and stuff, but he was one of Timothy Leary's LSD government experiment people because of his intelligence, like Mensa level or whatever. But that was pretty interesting. But it's interesting when you think about our government doing this, and then what does our government do once they find someone with these gifts? Do they turn them into an X-Man or use them for remote viewing? Remote viewing is a big thing that's pretty interesting. That's psychic, pretty fascinating. And I know they really use that stuff, where you can see far away places from your room psychically. And I've had people on the show that do remote healing. I believe it works, but they say they can do it. And I have seen weird things from it when they've said they've done it and things like that. It's definitely.
Do you believe it? Did you say you do believe it, or you don't? You do.
Oh, I do. I just struggle with it, I guess. I think it's like prayer and intention, and suddenly we've had lots of medicine people on who do healing and things like that, and I believe it. They're doing it. It's just trying to. There's parts of your mind that tries to grasp with it, though. That things like that. But to crack the egg.
Yeah, it's hard because But I know exactly what you're talking about because I came up against that a lot on my journey because we grew up in this, mainstream Western culture that says these types of experiences and phenomena are impossible. And if you believe in them, you're crazy or delusional or stupid. So, of course, our minds don't want to believe because you have that underlying assumption that that's what, you hear growing up. So, it's difficult, and that was my struggle the whole way too, because I doubly trained as a scientist and I had this whole identity around that. So it was really hard for me I was like, well, I must follow the evidence because I'm a scientist, but if the evidence goes to something impossible, my worldview says that can't be. So, but then it's like, but I must follow the evidence. And so it's like this cycle, this circle of this catch-22 that goes on forever until you're finally like, well, I don't know what to tell you. The evidence points to things impossible being true. So the worldview must be wrong. It must be, there must be something else, another version, another perspective. And that's where I found myself too. But it's hard, right? Because it's everywhere. It's in the media. It's in the scientific paradigm. It's in mainstream culture.
What do you mean by the upside down? Is that Stranger Things terminology?
Yeah. Yeah, it was one of the chapters is titled that because that's when I learned about all of the research that had been done, the psi research, which includes what you mentioned, the remote viewing work. It had been done. It's been done for over 100 years in hundreds of labs, thousands of participants. There was so much research that there were reviews and meta-analyses, which in science is when we put all the evidence together to evaluate if something is legitimate or not. So I was really surprised by how much research there was. I thought for sure no one had ever studied. I was like, no one has ever looked at intuitives. So I was really surprised to find all of it. And I was a scientist, so it was completely out of my purview and guaranteed. And actually, I ended up interviewing a lot of my scientist colleagues about what they believe in spirituality and paranormal phenomena, and that's in the book too. And none of them were aware of that research either. So I started thinking of it as as the upside down, where it's like this whole other world of research that is extensive but invisible to us, like normal mainstream scientists. So we're just completely unaware of it, but it's happening in parallel to us. It's just kept out of our field of view. So that's why I named it that. That's how I thought of it in my mind.
So with these interviews, what were some of the common themes that these people mentioned, the scientists, and what's some things that got brought up?
They I was just curious to know if, and this was at the point where I had read enough that I was starting to think, okay, maybe my worldview is not 100% accurate. Maybe there's more. And then I started to feel the threat of, wait, maybe I'm crazy, because society tells me, Western society tells me I'm crazy and stupid for believing this. So I interviewed my colleagues to see, what they believed in and what they thought. And I found them to be, because I think there's this assumption that scientists are atheists and that that they don't believe in anything paranormal. But all of them were open. And all of them were kind of like, we don't know the answers to everything. There's a lot of mysteries left to be solved. And if there's even, one data point, if something happens one time, but it actually happens, then, your whole model is wrong. Then it's like one of my friends was saying, if you throw a lemon up in the air and 9 times out of 10, it falls back down, but 1 time out of 10, it doesn't, and it floats. You can't ignore that 1 time in 10, right? That's like a outlier data point, but it's a data point that you have to consider. So they were more open-minded than I thought they would be, and more open-minded than I was, frankly. They were, and they all told me stories. Like I didn't, to respect their privacy, I didn't include the stories in the book, but all of them told me weird experiences that they had, or about people in their lives who seemed to just know things or make predictions that were always right, One of them was into astrology and was telling me it's a real science. So every single one of them had something that they believed in or experienced that they maybe didn't, spend a lot of time on obsessing over or figuring out, but they had, experienced things that we couldn't explain with our current science. So it was really, really enlightening and encouraging, I think.
So you had a coast to coast appearance recently?
Yeah, Wednesday night, Thursday morning, 12. Oh my gosh, terrible hours. I'm still recovering.
When was that? That was this Wednesday, this past. Yeah, that's why I haven't listened to it since like Art Bell, but I know that's a big thing to go on there for sure. How was that? Was it nerve wracking? And those hours. That's why I would never. I can't listen to it. And then I thought about even appearing those hours. No way.
Oh man, I go to bed so early too, so it's really hard. It was really fun actually. It was it's George with George Norrie, so it was fun. We took callers. They had interesting stories and questions. It was a bit nerve wracking, I think. Anytime any live radio or live anything is a little bit nerve wracking, I think.
How long was it? An hour? Sorry, it buzzed out.
No, it was 2 hours.
Oh
Yeah.
goodness.
12 a.m. to 2 a.m. for me. It's so late.
Yeah. And Wham, how long has it been since you listened to Coast to Coast? A long time?
No, I listen to them every now and then because at my work, I work remote. And I listen to podcasts while I work all the time. And I don't stay up and listen to it live because, I'm on the East Coast. So forget that crap. It's like at 2 a.m. in the morning.
Yeah.
But I do listen to the recordings. I try to avoid certain hosts because I don't like them very much, but some of the guests are okay.
Yeah, I've listened to them before. I know they used to be on the radio here somehow, like on AM somehow. I don't even know if that's still here at all. Like I don't know. I'd have to check. But yeah, well, that's a cool appearance for sure. And when it comes to, I guess we talked about spiritual beliefs. What happened?
She's gone. She's gone. Her feed is gone.
Weird stuff keeps happening.
Her feed is gone.
Mercury retrogrades.
Yep. Started today.
It's weird because it's showing it black on there, but now she's back. There you go.
Can you hear me?
There.
Yes. Let me remove the one that went black, which is
There
weird. There was still like a dark square up spinning, and then you came back.
Not live. Maybe to you, but not.
Okay. You're back. Mercury retrograde.
Happened today. Started today.
Get to blame everything on it. I got Saturn going backwards too, so I'm just getting
7 planets are going backwards. So
I feel like I'm being mutilated with a cheese grater.
Well, just spread yourself on a pizza and it'll be good.
That's right, for sure.
It was a full moon.
Yeah.
Tomorrow. Yep. Harvest moon.
And on our Halloween show, we have a man that thinks he's a werewolf coming on.
Nice.
Oh, that sounds fun.
His name's Denny Sargent, and he's a Llewellyn book, Werewolf Pack Magic. And it's like a werewolf magic weird book. I tried to get a weird one, and I succeeded. Hopefully,
that's a really good one.
Past it. That's October 28th, I think. Well, Wham, anything you'd like to add about spiritual phenomenon and neuroscience?
Well, I guess the only thing that I don't know about adding anything. I guess what I would say is, it's in a way. Oops, she's disappeared again. And I'll just say this anyway because she might hear it. But in a way,
this chair.
What's going on?
back pain from a crappy chair I'm having to sit in.
Back pain and a
Here we
crap.
go. Back
There's-
pain.
Okay, see.
There we go. Ona's being abducted by aliens repeatedly and brought back.
Right, there she is.
And she's
So
back.
I guess what I would say before you disappear again is
Yeah.
It happens.
that as someone, myself, as someone who has been through many traumas, many more traumas than almost most people I know. I think the only trauma I haven't been in has been being in a war zone. And that is not a request. But seriously, but and it's also had a lot of spiritual various types of experiences. I think personally that it's perfectly fine that you do not at this point have had very much, because what that means is that for me what that means is that you are very focused about being here, which I think that ultimately that's what we're supposed to do, is be focused being here. And it's just that for a variety of reasons, some of us get tuned into other stuff. I don't think that it's necessarily important unless you decide at some point to have experiences. As long as you can derive meaning from other people's experiences, and as long as the research that you do connects you to other people in a meaningful way, it's really not necessary to have. I mean, I've had some really profound experiences, and the problem with having profound experiences is that when you have them, and you've had a lot of them, there's a part of you that can come to sort of depend on them a little bit, and you lose track of why it's important to focus here. And that's part of the reason why I think that some people who are very, very spiritually inclined, and we all know people like this, people who are very, very spiritually inclined, they often don't live very long here, or they have really severe health issues or some other kinds of things. And that's because their focus is mixed, between the other worlds and here, and their body can't translate that. It can't figure out how to live in between. And so I think that your choice, you'll have to decide this at some point in your life, but it could be that your choice has been to document these things from a place of relative neutrality.
Yeah.
And focus, and that provides its own momentum and its own proof, if you will, for people who need that kind of an approach.
Yeah.
Because I will tell you, and Jeffrey knows, if you ask for experiences too much, you may get them, and they're never what you expect, and they scare the living piss out of you.
Yeah.
And so
I believe that.
It's not necessarily a good thing to have experiences, particularly before you're ready. And so, that I think that's perfectly fine. I mean, as you do these interviews, you'll find that there will be people who will ask you about your experiences. And I think it's perfectly fine to say, you know what, that's just not what my gig is here right now.
Yeah, I'm like trying to think. I mean, I do. I have. I'm very intuitive, so I have precognitive dreams. I have things like that, but I haven't had a very like connected, or I feel like in flow. But yeah, I've not had any. But I also actively, after my interviews for the book, I actively all the time, like I am not interested in seeing or experiencing anything that's going to scare me, because
right.
I don't think I could handle it.
No, right. No, and that's good. I mean, it's like, I've had to I've had to put limits on who appears in my room because it really, and people have heard me talk about this on this show before, it really pisses me off when somebody wakes me up in the middle of the night out of sleep. That really makes me angry. And because it's like, if you can't have the good grace to come in like regular people at normal waking times when I'm off doing stuff, then you just should screw off. And I think this about spiritual beings. I've been awakened by things in the middle of the night. I mean, there's this one hilarious account where I was doing some spiritual stuff out in the backyard, and I went to bed, and then that night I woke up. I was completely awake. I was not in any kind of state. I woke up because I heard a noise in my office, which is right next to my bedroom, and I heard somebody in my office say audibly, "This is where she lives."
Oh my God.
And I knew that it was something to do with what I had done. And I just said really loud, "Get out!" Just like that. And they did and didn't come back. But it's like, you have to put limits up because beings from other places aren't diurnal. And so they don't kind of connect necessarily to the kinds of lives we're supposed to live here. So they just poke in whenever they decide they want to, and it's not always convenient. So you do have to make boundaries. So if you say, "Listen, I don't want to see crap that freaks me out," I think that's perfectly fine.
Yeah. As you were talking, I just remembered, mine are not like full-fledged like that, but I just remembered I did have one. So I was talking to my friend over Zoom, the one who's very intuitive, and I had asked, this was earlier, this was like over maybe 2 years ago, and I think I was asking for proof. And I actually specifically said, like, I was asking my guides, like I was reading, spiritual literature, just like, oh, you could ask your guides for proof. So I asked my guide, I was like, I want to see you, but I don't want to see you. I don't want to be scared. And so I was talking to my friend on Zoom, and I was just sitting just like we are right now. And this has never happened to me before. And just like, as we're talking, I saw like sparkles, like sparkly lights, just up above in my ceiling, like in my upper visual field. And it like caught my attention, and I looked up. And I was staring at it, and my friend was like, "What are you looking at? What happened? Did someone come into your place? Like, are you okay?" Because I just kind of zoned out and was staring at it. And then I came back, and I was like, I don't know. I don't know what I just saw. I was like, I don't know if I'm like low blood sugar or something. Like, I just saw sparkly lights. And then he tapped in or tuned in, and he was like, "Oh, those are your guides." And he's like, "Did you ask them to show you themselves? Like, did you ask for a sign?" And I was like, "I did." He's like, "Yeah, they're saying like that was you said you wanted to see them, but you didn't want to see them." And I was like, "Okay, get out." It's too much. I mean, I had that one, which I thought was it was crazy because it was, and I was like, "Oh, they really like listened." It was a very visual experience, but yeah, I didn't want to see a figure. Figures scare me.
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, they can be scary. I mean, I lived in a haunted apartment once, and I wasn't aware of this. I was sleeping in my bedroom, and I all of a sudden I was awakened by my roommate screaming, and I was like, I woke up, and I was like, opened the door, and I'm like, "What?" And she had come in the front door. We lived like on the second and third story of a house. And so she had come in the front door and come up, and right at the landing, right where the door was to my bedroom, she saw a figure standing there, a man she actually was clear enough that she actually saw like he had like a plaid shirt on and some stuff. And she thought that he had come out of my room, that he was an intruder. And then he had walked to her left into the living room and just disappeared just like that. And then she started screaming, and of course I was asleep and didn't have any, wasn't aware of it at all. But yeah, so it can be really unnerving seeing figures.
Yeah. So I ask for things like that, like signs and symbols, but but no figures, please.
Yeah.
um, and I did have one other. This is before I was. This is also at the begin. This is when I was just depressed and I hadn't started looking into anything spiritual. And this was weird because I was specifically anti-spiritual at this point. I was deep depression, but it was a normal night. I fell asleep in my bed with the light on. And I woke up because somebody said my name really loudly in my ear. And it was a beautiful voice. It was like a beautiful female voice, but it said my name really, really loudly to the point it woke me up, and I got up. And I was like, as I was waking up, I'm like, someone's in my place. Of course, I wake up, no one's there. And I had this thought of it was an angel. And then I woke up and I was like, I don't believe in angels. And I was just like, that was so weird. And I went to bed. And then in the morning, my mom's spiritual. So I thought I should just tell her, you know. So I told her, and of course she was like, oh, that was an angel. And I was like, those don't exist. But then of course later when I started learning about everything, and it's never happened since. It never happened before. And it was a really, really dark night, like emotionally. So it was kind of like somebody was like, wake up, like stop it, snap out of it.
It had the quality of a beautiful voice.
Yeah, it was beautiful. It was like the most beautiful voice I've ever heard.
That's really nice. It's really nice.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the beauty of that you can hang on to. Well, and I'm sure that what your family is Iranian.
Yes.
Iranian. Sobhani is a Iranian surname. I saw your surname and I was like, oh.
Yeah.
I'm kind of an Iranophile, so.
Oh.
So when I think of Iran, I think of all these incredible stories, going back to before Zoroaster and all of that stuff. So, but I'm sure that there's a long history there of
yes,
variety of spiritual stories and really cool things.
Yeah, I wish
deep history you could plumb into if you wanted to.
Yeah. And I've recently, because of this journey, felt inspired to be more connected to my heritage, and embrace those more mystical or mythical aspects of my culture that I've kind of abandoned, or I had for years because of just growing up in Western culture and adopting, being a scientist and stuff. So yeah, I'm just starting that, and I'm really enjoying it actually.
Well, and Iran though has a there's between Turkey and Iran there's a good tradition of science there too. So yeah. It's not those are not opposing factors in Iranian history.
Yeah, absolutely.
So carry on that good tradition. It's a good tradition. It's a tradition that Westerners need to know more about.
Yeah, not current day, which is
absolutely not.
Yeah.
Well,
sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say one of the big evidences for me of paranormal or spiritual is death. Unless you just think there's nothing, to me, death seems like the kick in the pants that will bring everybody over to the fact that there's more to this, because if you think there's anything, you're getting ejected to it, unless you just think that's it when you croak, which I don't believe that. But that's the primer. You're going to croak and get ejected into the paranormal, whether you like it or not. So how do you not believe in it, or thinking there's nothing?
It's funny. I read, I was reading the past life regression, like the psychiatrists, a few of them have written summaries of their work. And I think one of them said something like that, or maybe, I think it was one of them. And they said, because of the Western culture, allegedly souls that get to the other side are having like it takes longer for them to adjust to the spiritual world because there's more to let go of from, like, there's so much disbelief. They're not like, it's not, which is kind of weird because shouldn't your soul remember? But I don't know. I'm not an expert. But I remember reading something like that, which is really interesting.
Definitely. And what did you mean by your chapter, Sometimes Things Need to Die? Sounds like a horror novel. Sometimes things need to die.
Yeah, that was my, again, it's reference to my identity, my old way of being and my old way of thinking, because I had such a hard time letting that go. But once I started reading about spirituality and esoteric practices and stuff, like I found that, you know, the death and rebirth, transformation, metamorphosis, I found all of those mythologies really, really helpful in framing what I was going through, which was completely lacking from before I came across this literature. Like, I had no framework to understand what I needed to do to get out of this crisis. And once I found that kind of that framework, that mythology, it really helped me. And that's why I framed the whole book kind of in that way of like, oh, I needed to learn that it's okay to change. It's okay to let things die, because better things can be born. But for me, that was extremely, extremely transformational and very helpful. So I think it's sad that we don't embrace the, more widely as a society, embrace those kinds of mythologies anymore.
So you talk about scientists opening to this. Were there any scientists that got mad about it or got upset about it? You come across anybody that's like, humbug?
I'm sure they will. Luckily, gosh, again, not asking for it. I'm sure nobody's reached out to me yet, but
that's good. Well, maybe lately people are opening up a lot more. The world's a different place. It's a lot weirder and a lot more suffering and a lot of craziness. So people are seeking the spiritual more to deal with it through their faith or whatever. So
I actually had I was on another podcast today with a professor of psychology, and he was, oh yeah, bless you. He was talking about how he thinks we might be in a dark night of the soul, like our whole society, and maybe like having an initiation of a sort, coming face to face with the fact that we don't know everything and that is so much uncertainty and we need to embrace that. And I don't know, I couldn't agree more. So I think there's a shift happening.
And this is your first book, right?
Yes. Hopefully not the last.
Yeah. How long did it take you to write it?
It didn't take me that long so I didn't set out to write a book. I just trying to find the answers to the universe for myself. So I was
the answers of the universe for yourself. I'm sorry.
That's what I wanted. Yeah, that was my
very lofty ambitions, and
that was what I set out to find. So I just had this collection of interviews and notes, and then I had a mentor who was like, "Well, why don't you, write it up so you can make sense of it all, and possibly turn it into a book." And so then I wrote it up. It didn't take me, well, because I had notes. It took maybe like 2.5 months to put it all together, so it didn't take very long. But I mean, the project was much, it was much longer. It was like over 2 years. But when it came to writing it, it was pretty quick. I'm also just a very intense person. So I prefer to do things intensely for a short amount of time and just move on.
So I know that your bio, it says some of your work was featured in New York Times and Vox and media outlets. Is that stuff about neuroscience?
Yeah, that was more neuroscience and research in general. Yeah, not this stuff. Although who knows? Maybe in the future.
And what do you think about I know consciousness is a complex subject, but is it like levels of awareness of? I mean, it's like we're always trying to figure out exactly what consciousness is, or feel it, or embrace it, or become it. What have you learned about consciousness through all this?
Yeah, neuroscience doesn't know anything really about consciousness. So I don't have any additional insight.
She confesses.
Oh, yeah, no, we don't know anything. I mean, even when I was in graduate school, I remember that being a thing that was discussed. Like, we don't understand how consciousness emerges from these systems in our brains. So, which is why I never liked to think about consciousness as like a academic topic. I was like, we don't know, so what's the point thinking about it? So when I came to all of this like unexplained phenomena and spirituality, people kept asking me, because they're like, oh, you're a neuroscientist, what do you think about consciousness? And I remember being like, what does consciousness have to do with any of this? And so, because my idea of what it was, in neuroscience, it's just like you're awake or you're asleep. Those are the studies that we do. Trying to get at like the deeper levels, we just don't have a lot of great work. So I don't think I have any additional insights. I mean, I turned to other philosophy and philosophers to read about, and I put them in the book to learn about what other people thought about it and how it's related to all of this. So yeah, but neuroscience, we don't have a good grasp of it at all. So we're nowhere near figuring it out.
So neuroscience, you're a doctor. You don't really do surgery or anything. It's more like psychology. I don't know anything about it really.
So yeah, actually, they don't teach you about the mind when they teach you about the brain. So I had to educate myself on psychology, but neuroscience is more like I did neuroimaging work. So structural and functional, like MRI images of the brain. And in graduate school, I was focused on psychopathic traits. So it's like, what are the brain circuits involved when somebody is callous and unemotional and cruel? So we do a lot of neural correlate mapping, is what we call it. But we don't tie it back to psychology, like clinical psychology, actually, which is one of my complaints about the field. But not very comprehensive.
Yeah, you would think that there would be implications for that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. That's something. Yeah, that's something else I learned on this journey. Actually, was how narrow our fields are. And neuroscience really focuses on sensory, motor, conditioning, things like that, and leaves, kind of, childhood trauma and clinical disorders, mental, that kind of stuff, relate to more clinical psychology, which is a shame, which is probably why we don't have a lot of things figured out, because the two fields keep their knowledge separate, which
so it doesn't really deal yet with like epigenetics, how events can actually change neural patterning.
Some labs do some of that. Some, yeah, they do a little bit of that. And the problem is that neuroscience experiments are so expensive. Like, if you're going to do imaging with an MRI machine, it's so expensive. So it's like, where are the funding dollars going? That's what ultimately decides what gets studied.
That's true. That's true of any science.
Yeah.
So is there other books in your horizon that you think about? That is it the same subject, or is there other things you'd like to tackle?
So I talk a little bit in the book about the healing that you can get from altered states of consciousness. So I talk about past life regression. I talk a little bit about psychedelics. And I'm really interested in that, as I mentioned, those states and how they show us how we can have personal healing, how we can encounter spiritual phenomena, and how we can encounter transpersonal or paranormal phenomena. So I've been really focused on that. Like I write a Alter States of Consciousness / psychedelics newsletter where I like think about those issues. So that's kind of where my head is at right now. But I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I think I've been mostly focusing on that, and then also really been into, I don't have the book here, but synchronicities. I found that a lot of like psychologists and psychiatrists are interested in, and I've always noticed I've had like crazy synchronicities, especially lately between my dreams and my waking life, and so I'm really interested in that right now. And there's this book. I haven't read it yet, but I spoke to the psychiatrist who wrote it. I think it's called Meaningful Coincidences or Meaning. I think it's
Is
called
it Bernard Beatman?
Yeah.
Bernard?
Yeah.
November 11th. He's coming home.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm really interested in reading more about that, just because I've always been personally interested in it, but I don't know a lot about it.
The best psychedelics to me are the ones that don't last as long as the other crazy ones. The short ones. I like the short ones that are
DMT.
short. Yeah, I like.
Yep, see. Mercury
that
retro.
one, but internet, but I think it's stormy outside. My internet keeps doing weird stuff. But I like that one because it's short. You don't freak out. And I've had some wild experiences doing that. It's been a while, but when I did, I saw weird writing on the wall to where I walked up to the wall and was like, what the hell is this? And, it was like some kind of weird language that I saw. And I don't know if anyone else would see it if they were there. If they were not on it, probably not. But it was some kind of weird writing on the wall. I don't know what the heck it was. But some other ones, a lot of balls of light around, like spears of light. And I've also heard from shamans that those beams of light can turn into spears and travel. They also said the dead can do that. Spirits travel in spear form. So maybe that's what it was. There was some other one I did that was similar to acid. That was the short round one, like an uncle of it or something. I like that one. It lasted like 3 hours. Wasn't like 10 hours of thinking you're going to die. Please, God, don't let me die and get through this.
No. Psilocybin's the best.
Yeah. And they last.
After you can drive on it.
8 hours. And it depends, probably shorter. But and there's so many weird like synthetics and stuff. You have to be careful. One that scares me the most that I could have did, but I didn't because it scared me.
It did.
Was that toad venom stuff?
Oh my god!
Hell no!
You did the toad venom stuff?
Did you freak out and think you're going to croak? Because the videos I see of it are terrifying. People like freaking out and screaming.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how I acted when I was on it, and I don't want to know, but it was very quick. It was like 20, 25 minutes. I dissolved. I disappeared, and then I became the entire universe, all of space and time.
Cool.
And I did twice. Then the second time I had a near-death experience where I thought I actually died. And then I became the whole universe. And then when I came back, I was like so grateful to be alive. Like it was like being reborn. Like every detail of being alive was beautiful because I thought I had actually died. So when I came back, I was like, oh my God, I'm so glad I didn't actually have to be stuck in the universe, like flying around.
I don't know if my heart can take that stuff. I don't know. No, I've been having blood pressure stuff, so I have to be careful. but definitely fascinating. I know Mike Tyson did it. I bet that was a hoot.
It's not to be taken lightly, that's for sure. It's
Yeah,
very serious.
yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
DMT is the one I like. It's just been a long time for sure. Uh, and mushrooms, I'd love to just be able to find those. Everybody else seems to find them. I've never found one of them. That the kind that the good ones.
Psilocybin.
Yeah, like everybody seems like they find them. I never find them. Like just growing. I wish.
I won't tell you where the stash I know is.
Yeah,
Are you in Florida, you said? Florida?
I'm in Florida. She's in Hudson Valley.
I'm in New York.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I don't think Florida will be legalizing anything
They
soon.
have pot, and they're trying to do weird Republican stuff to it. They did. They did do weird Republican stuff to it, like capping it and all this stuff.
Weird Republican stuff.
That's what they did, like for probably
They
religious reasons. The liberals would like just get high, legalize everything. No, I'm kidding. But they did. That DeSantis, little Trumplegooch, your D-spot assistant, mad scientist to Trumplegooch. But anyway, that's a whole nother ball game. They were trying to separate Florida down here from the United States.
Oh my God. Okay. Good luck.
Like Texas stuff. If it wasn't for all the good Cuban races and other races here, we would be really plunged into darkness. At least we have sense enough to not vote for them as bad. But they did just do something very bad to the medicinal weed here that's sad and pathetic and crazy. Like capping it and lowering the THC and just all this crap that nowhere else is doing that I know of. But probably some crazy other state doing it, but just weird Puritan, whatever their morality. Don't want you to get too much of that now. We have to tap that THC.
Happiness. Not enough happiness. Too much happiness.
They can kiss my arse.
Too much joy.
I'm still trying to figure out what the hell they did to it and how it's going to affect everything. Like, it's so weird. I don't even know. So I had to write all my weed stoner friends and ask them that are more serious about it. That the heads had to go look at this chart, man. What the hell does this mean?
Oh
But so Brian Weiss, I've heard of that guy and read that book. I have it somewhere. What? Yeah, I own that book. I have some of his cards.
Yeah, books.
Like cards, like that Oracle cards. Like he has some weird little cards. I have those. But
he does. Okay.
Yeah, he has some card sets. I'm not
Oh my
sure
gosh, I have to look into that.
Yeah, he's got. I know I have one set. There's probably some other ones.
Not booze.
It's just Robitussin.
No, it's Mucinex. I've got lung stuff going on.
But he has I think they have positive affirmation on them, like that, like those cards, like from his books or whatever, and things like that.
Cool. Yeah, I have to look into that. That's I've read, I think, all of his books. I really like them. They're easy to read. They're like interesting stories. They're what got me into the whole past life regression literature, and then that led me to Michael Newton, Roger Wolger, and some of the other ones. So I can't wait to check out these cards.
Yeah, there's definitely a few sets, or if not more. I got one of them for sure. Who were some of the other spiritual people or books similar to him, authors that you grew up with that influenced you or that opened you up?
So his book was what launched it, those series, and then let me think. I just did like a 10 best spiritual books. When I read Dean Radin, a lot of Dean Radin's books about psi research, but then also the ones that there's one called Supernormal, I think, which tied it into spirituality. So I liked that one a lot. There's a book by Terence McKenna called Food of the Gods, which is about psychedelics, but I think it helped me frame. I think it was one of the first books I read that kind of helped me frame. Okay, this is Western culture's belief. This is other cultures' beliefs. Like there's other worldviews that incorporate more of our human experience than the Western worldview. And that was one of those books that kind of started to help me understand, like provide more of a framework to understand that it's possible that there's other perspectives that allow for these impossible phenomena. Another book like that was Cosmos and Psyche by Richard Tarnas, which I really loved. Which is not. It's about astrology. Actually, it's about his like 30-year following of astrology, but in the beginning he talks about the Western worldview and the worldview of other like indigenous cultures and how they're different. That also helped me sort of frame my thinking. I don't know why I'm blanking right now. Like, I don't look at my face.
Some of my big ones, Neil Donald Walsh. I've had him on the show. Conversations with God, like Wayne Dyer. He's passed away now. That sucked. Celestine Prophecy. That's a good one about synchronicity by James Redfield. If you've never read those, Celestine Prophecy.
Oh,
those are really good. Those kind of started me on some of my stuff when I was back in my 20s. It's called The Celestine Prophecy with a C by James Redfield. That's pretty good. They're kind of like fiction stories with spiritual.
Celestine Prophecy, however, is not a very scientific book, just so you know that.
Okay.
What, Celestine Prophecy?
Yeah. I was just telling her it's not a very scientific book, but that's okay.
Yeah, it's kind of about nature and it's different. It was a big deal.
It's a revelatory book. It's a revelatory book that sort of is positing itself as kind of being indigenous, but it's not really actually. It's just sort of new age, which is a little bit different.
I see.
It's got a good soundtrack. I have a soundtrack. It's like classical, weird little kids singing in it and stuff. It's pretty good.
Okay.
I've had Neil Donald Walsh on, and we talked about aliens, which is kind of neat. But he normally doesn't really talk about that, so maybe a little, but not a whole lot. But we're ending. We said we'd do an hour or so, and we're at the so point. And it's been great having you on. We definitely have enjoyed it. What's your website and everything?
Yeah, my website it's just my name, monasobhaniphd.com, and last name is Sobhani. And you can find the link to order my book there, and also sign up for my psychedelic newsletter if you're interested.
I'll have to check that out for sure, the psychedelic newsletter. I'm familiar with Terence McKenna as well. I have that book, and I have like a gazillion like weird little documentaries on a hard drive somewhere that he just all these weird, like he made so many. I don't even know if you can like find them to buy them. Like it's just weird little movies of Terence McKenna tripping balls. No, I don't know if he's tripping balls.
Him and his brother Dennis McKenna are really interesting.
Yeah, definitely. Well, we appreciate it so much. Thanks so much, and keep us in the loop on any future endeavors. And we appreciate it. It's been great having you on.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure. Nice to meet you.
Yes, take it easy.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
All right, everybody. What is that echo?
I don't know. It ain't me. It's got to be you, bud.
It's me. It's coming from. It was me, like my voice echoing. So I guess I need to get a new headset or something. I don't know what the hell is happening, but she said she won't do a little over an hour, so that's what I shot for. And neuroscience, they don't do brain surgery, do they?
No. Actually, they just are interested in looking at the physical structures of the brain, such as they can be documented.
It's like psychology or something.
No, she said psychology is different.
Different.
They're talking about the physical structures of the brain. That's what neuroscientists are doing. Psychologists are talking about the person, as the mind or consciousness, which, remember, she told you they didn't talk about consciousness. The models of the brain that traditionally neuroscientists have had are purely mechanical and biological. They don't involve anything else. They don't talk about anything else. So therefore, they can't explain a lot of things. They can't explain where consciousness comes from. They can't even explain what intelligence is, particularly. All of the workings of the mind, the way the mind actually works, they don't know for sure. They're just, for them, the brain and the mind is the same thing.
Well, I was surprised she was so open about tripping on toad venom. That's surprising.
Well, she's obviously had experiences, and she's
Yes.
open.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah,
Well, checking out this Jeffrey K. dude. How do you say his name? Cripple?
Creepall.
I have that one book, but I never read it. But it looks really cool. Mutants and Mystics. But I'm looking through some of his books. He's got a cool one. Kali's Child, the Mystical and Erotic in the Life and Teachings of Ramakrishna.
Right. Well, there's a new one that's coming up. He's going to be releasing a new one that is supposed to be, everybody in the para-weird universe is going ooh and ah about it. It's supposed to like transform our idea or whatever, and it's like, whatever, probably not. It's just pushing the envelope a little bit closer to the idea that consciousness has something to do with all of these weird things.
There's Authors of the Impossible, the Paranormal, and the Sacred. I don't know how old that is. There's a bunch of The Serpent's Gift. That sounds interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Gnostic Reflection. I was just looking through some of this stuff. I gotta be careful with this guy. I know he's a Vanny and a Strieber. He's in deep with them, so I've never really talked to him. But someone sent me his book because I didn't buy it. It must have been a publicist. But
it's okay to talk to him. I mean, I think that if you interviewed him or something, it'd be fine. I mean,
yeah,
whatever Strieber's problem is, I mean, it's his problem.
most of them probably don't even remember who I am, and
I'm sure he doesn't. I mean, Strieber is so involved with himself that who knows.
Yeah, most definitely. And just the schedule coming up. Just want to read off some guests. Next week, I got to write this dude, Edward Pandemonium. Then Eva, that's Edward Pandemonium's like chaos magic and stuff like that. September 23rd, Eva Marquez. I'm going to channel some Palladians. All that stuff about alien races and probably some light worker stuff. I don't know. It seems interesting, but I don't really know how I feel about some of these races that people say exist. Because do they really know? Or are they just shooting from the hip? Like you always see all this stuff, Palladians, Andromedans, and I don't know what I think about all that.
I don't really think about it. I mean, it's like, I think there's a variety of different reasons why people could be having seeing all these different beings. Partly because we're going to see things that we most connect to in one way or another. Partly because, so some of these things connect to what we expect beings to be like. I don't think that they're really extraterrestrials. We are not Grand Central Station. And so, but whatever.
And they're always channeling messages from them.
Yeah.
And then, of course, it seems like exopolitics kind of embraces all that stuff and says, pumps out these stories about them and stuff that no one knows. They're just like making this stuff up. Maybe someone's channeling something. Oh, I saw this silly thing. I didn't watch all of it. I just flipped through it really fast. This Super Soldier Talk podcast. And there's this dude on there channeling a reptilian. He was like, sitting weird and channeling a reptilian.
Channeling a reptilian.
I've looked at some of that Super Soldier stuff. It is just cheesy, some of it. Like some girl on there that looks like she should be like in anime porn or something, and she's like talking about fighting reptilians on a secret space station. It's almost like Amazon erotica or something.
Amazon erotica.
Like I think they're just making stuff up. I don't think, maybe some of it's true, but a lot of it's just like, I don't know, fiction. Because there's never any proof or anything. It's just them, freeballing about this stuff. It's just confusing. That's what I think. There may be some stuff to it, but all that light worker stuff kind of leads back to Summit University. Wasn't that kind of the start of a lot of that stuff?
Yeah.
I had some of those books. They're really weird but interesting. Like they released some Book of Enoch, supposedly, the Book of Enoch in a paperback. It was kind of cool, but there's some weird book called the Soulless One. Not sure what that was about, but that's kind of where a lot of this light worker stuff started. Seems like. I mean, I'm sure there's other sources of it. That does seem kind of like the root of it. It was kind of like a cult, wasn't it? Summit University.
Oh well, no. Summit University was a theosophical. It was a theosophical organization. Blavatsky. Helena Blavatsky, the theosophical group. That's kind of what started them, and they're not really a cult. They're kind of a form of, I guess they have some occult tendencies, but they were more of a universalist kind of church, a movement.
There was some guy that we were talking to somebody. Oh, it was Richard Grossinger that wrote a book about Jane Roberts and Seth.
Uh-huh.
I wrote it down somewhere. Seth something. Supposed to be really good. Inner Traditions book. Let me see if I can find it. Recentering Seth by John Friedlander. Teachings from a multidimensional entity on living gracefully and skillfully in a world you create but do not control. Seemed pretty interesting. It just reframes Jane Roberts' Seth teachings. Just a whole book about her, I guess, but I wouldn't mind checking it out or getting him on the show at some point. My problem right now is I'm running out of dates. And then September 30th is Wild Trees. Talk about the tardigrade again.
Yay. Yay, tardigrades. Yay.
I'm having one November date left and then some December dates. Holidays cut into those, so it's like little breaks and stuff. October 7th, you're back then. Jonathan Hunt, that's the Trick or Treat Tarot. He's an artist that's pretty well known. He was just at Dragon Con. Here we talk about the tarot and talk about Dragon Con, and he's an artist. October 14th, you'll be there. I just got this dude, something about, let me find it. Dark Side of Paganism or something. Lou. Where'd it go? Hold on a second. Let me find it. His name's Frater Tenebris. What's up with these dudes that name themselves Frater? That's not their real name, is it? That's like a magician.
It's a title. It means brother.
Okay. I mean, I've seen several of them do it, and I'm like, what does this even mean? So they just like change their name to it, like.
Well, it's a title that they within like an occult order. Sometimes they will use that name with each other, like brother and sister. So a woman will be soror, and a man will be brother. Soror means sister. And it's just a way of referring to them each in themselves. That's all. I mean, yeah. I mean, it usually means that they're a member of a lodge.
What if there's like 5 of them and they're all in the same room together and they have to say each other's name? They're like Frater, Frater, Frater,
Well, yeah,
Frater.
but they say Frater Barabbas, Frater so and so, Frater so and so. I mean, Frater Akkad. Good Lord, Jeffrey, you're so literal.
It's weird,
It's
but
not. It's a title. It's not a name.
the philosophy of dark paganism, wisdom and magic to cultivate the self. Kind of looks like the Necronomicon in the front of it.
I suppose, yeah.
There's a pinnacle on it. It kind of reminds me of the Simon paperback. But it's not, of course, but it just kind of looks like it, sort of. But let's see. Steven Snyder, serial killers. Friend is Stephanie Quick. This dude does all kinds of like podcasts and stuff, so we can make fun of QAnon. He does that. We can talk about the Zodiac Killer. There's all kinds of stuff we can talk about. And then October 28th, Denny Sargent, the werewolf. Let me know if you want to sit in on that one.
Okay. Yeah, okay. I don't know if I'll be in town, but...
Okay. Well, if you do, just let me know. I'll have to hear Jay talk about lycanthropy and Dungeons and Dragons all night. Which is fine. But, oh, yeah. I said this last show, but I just want to say it again because it was really cool. Went to the drive-in for the first time in a million years and saw Bullet Train and saw Top Gun Maverick, which I'll probably never watch Top Gun Maverick or Bullet Train again, but it was fun. Best thing is they had good food. You order hamburgers and onion rings. They call you on the phone. You got to go get it because they fried it. I mean, not fried. They have grills and stuff. So then they got all your junky stuff, popcorn, nachos, and all that stuff. I've noticed lately with nachos, they don't do it the way they used to. They put these little cheap nachos in a bag and a cup of cheese. They used to be like real nachos or cheese. Waterworld had the cheap nachos in a bag. This place did. The drive-in, though, had good food. But the nachos, skip them. It's like little nachos in a bag with a cup of cheese. Like I remember it used to be like a big real nachos with like that liquid cheese on it. But the hamburger was good. The onion ring was good. But the experience is good mostly. It was in a kind of a creepy place that was well taken care of, like in the middle of the woods in the country. And then I would think about a horror movie would be really cool to take place with that kind of setting. Like you could have your kind of Texas Chainsaw Massacre House of 1,000 Corpses kind of house off to the woods. And then you have the drive-in, and then that's something they could do horror movies. And then at the end, their intermission come out and kill you, take you to their house. The drive-in could be part of the prop, which I'm surprised somewhere hasn't done that somewhere, but I'm sure they have. But it's a rare thing. Oh, Stephen King has a new book. I just got it.
Oh yeah, what is it?
Fairy Tale, and it actually like getting really good reviews. It's about, I don't know if it's a kid, a high school kid. I'm not going to read the whole thing, the synopsis, but somehow he finds a cassette tape, and it tells the story of how this man has a shed in his backyard with a portal to another world.
Wow.
And I'm not sure. It sounds like it might be kind of fantasy, like that Eyes of the Dragon or something. I mean, it looks kind of like that. I don't know. But I love the Eyes of the Dragon. I wouldn't mind reading that again. It was like a fantasy he did with dragons and stuff. But Fairy Tale, Stephen King. So I'm going to check that out. Also had his other book, Billy Summers, but I never read it. I didn't get around to that one. I have it, but I didn't read it. I saw somewhere that in the Anne Rice interview, the vampire, that Lestat and Louis really do each other. Vampires aren't supposed to do each other, like with their genitalia. Not that I know of. They usually don't, right? They usually just like drink blood. That's the sex. But from
Well,
what I
I
saw,
don't know. I don't know.
I don't think. I think that's breaking a code somewhere. The vampire Nosferatu. Nosferatu's junk don't work. He just drinks blood.
Okay.
I
Okay.
don't know. Those Twilight vampires probably did stuff.
Okay. It's okay.
Who knows? Let's not think about
I
it.
really don't know. I'm really not. I'm not an expert on these things.
Yeah, werewolves probably do, but vampires, no. That's. I know that's not something that normally comes up, and I've seen a lot of vampire movies. Maybe in The Hunger with David Bowie and stuff. That was actually a Whitley Strieber book, which surprisingly, The Hunger. You ever see that with
Yeah,
David Bowie?
I have seen it. Yep.
Yeah, but usually, from what I see, they usually don't.
Catherine Deneuve and Susan Sarandon doing sort of real sexual biting things.
Yeah, usually it's blood and biting. It's not, real sex. That's for humans. So, but who knows? It may be good. It may not be. I don't know. I haven't seen it, so I can't really say. Uh, I finished up Peaky Blinders. That's a good show. You ever heard of Peaky Blinders?
Yep.
It's on the 6th season. I guess there's going to be a 7th one, but I was surprised that that actress Helen McCrory died. She's a good actress. She's one of the mother in the show. She passed away. Uh,
Oh, he's frozen again. Frozen in time.
on Showtime, Frankenstein, Dracula, and werewolves and stuff, and
Frozen.
kind of gothic Victorian with Eva Green. For some reason, they only did 3 seasons and then canceled it and claimed that that's what they meant to do, which was kind of weird. It didn't make much sense. But she's on BBC a lot, but she passed away from cancer. Ugh. I just looked her up. She was in Harry Potter, Part 2. British lady. That's sad. That's sad. They worked the death in pretty good, and it was respectable. But it's a good show. That guy's a good actor, Cillian Murphy. He may play Doctor Doom in Fantastic Four. You know, the dude that wears the iron mask,
Yeah.
the metal mask. That's the rumor anyway, but nobody knows. He was a good actor. That show's intense for. It's like a British mafia show, but I don't know how much it's based on history. I know there was really a Peaky Blinders. I've seen a documentary or something about it, but that was really, I guess, a group or a family or something. But it's actually pretty good. I liked it. Yeah, Peaky Blinders was a street gang based in Birmingham, England, which operated from the 1880s until the 1910s. The group, which grew out of the harsh economic deprivations of working class Britain, consisted largely of young criminals from lower to middle class backgrounds. They engaged in robbery, violence, racketeering, illegal bookmarking, and control of gambling. So, what year was that? 1910s. Wow.
1910. 112 years ago.
Tom Hardy's in it. That's pretty cool. He's like this mean Jewish guy that's crazy.
Mean Jewish guy.
Yeah, that's a badass. But let me see. What else? We got some other guests. The werewolf guy, that's October 28th. November 4th, Don Brunke, that's shadow animals, spirit animals and stuff. Bernard Bietman, that's the synchronicity books we mentioned earlier. And then I've still got some. Here's some stuff. These guests may be coming on. I'm supposed to schedule them for the last dates that I have, and I can. These will probably be here. These will probably be the ones when you come back. Weird Craft by Matthew Ash McKernan, healing self and nature through the mysteries of the fates, the Norns. That's Llewellyn.
Yay!
That's Llewellyn, the well of weird, the tree of weird. Am I saying it right? Is it
Yeah,
weird?
yeah, it's weird. Yeah, that's how you say it.
And that's a Llewellyn book. Let's see here. Oh, no, not that one. Sent me a bunch of them. Oh, they just sent me these little cards. Modern Witchcraft with the Greek Gods by Jason Mankey and Astria Taylor. Going to summon forth the Greek gods. Call them forth. Aphrodite and some Pan, which it just says mostly Aphrodite on here, but it's a book about the Greek gods. Powerful Juju, Naja Lightfoot, Goddesses, Music and Magic for Comfort, Guidance and Protection. She's been on before.
Oh yeah, I've seen
Yeah.
her.
It's been a while, but yeah. Then Werewolf Pack Magic. Look at that.
Yeah, I see that.
That's the werewolf.
So you've gotten all these things.
Well, the cards. They sent me the cards. And let's see. Yeah, that's it. Sent the cards and put that over there. And I'm supposed to just schedule them, sign them up. So, what you been watching lately? Anything good?
I haven't been watching anything lately, honestly. I have been reading and sleeping. I've had a little bit of illness. You can tell I was coughing and sneezing and and so I haven't really I have not been actively, I wrote a little I wrote a three installments of a blog post on my website, and that's pretty much all I've been doing. Been working.
Is your new website up?
Yep, ProfessorWham.com, WHAM Wham. Yes, it is.
What's been going on with your audiobooks? There any news on that?
Oh yes, I just got word from Michael. We finished the Lovecraft book, and it should be. I paid him last week, and it should be available. They're doing the quality check thing at Amazon right now, and it should be available probably within the next week. And I'll let you know.
Cool. And
just in time for Halloweeny.
Don't you have another one on audiobook?
Well, I've got
Hudson Valley.
I've got The Mysterious Beauty, Living with the Paranormal in the Hudson Valley. That's on Audible. And I've got, and the one I was just talking about is the Book of Lovecraft short stories. And Michael did them. Michael Hacker did both of them, and he did a good job on both of them, but he did a really, really, really good job on the short stories. Because I think that's kind of what he specializes in, is horror stories. So,
and he reads them, right?
Yeah. He it was really, really. I was reviewing them, and it was so weird hearing someone read a story that I'd written. Not like just an essay or a chapter, but a story. It was like somebody else had written it. It was really weird. It was a weird experience. It was very good. He does a good job.
Does he add like emotion to the situation?
Oh yeah. Each one of those stories, you've read the stories. Each one of those stories has sort of its own narrator, its own personality. And he was able to achieve. The first story, I suppose, if you wanted to, he could have read it with like a slight aristocratic British accent, but he didn't, and I didn't ask him to. But he did affect a certain kind of aristocratic tone with it, which was very good. And he just, each one of the stories has a very distinct narrator, and he was able to capture the distinctness of each one of those narrators. and especially especially the last one. The last story called The Vortex. That story has always sort of been weird to me because I've never really known exactly. I mean, I know what it's about, but it just always seemed like a kind of an odd story to me. I wrote it, but I was always sort of, I don't know. He somehow captured the deep emotional impact of it in a way I hadn't really thought of before. And so it, like I said, it was almost like listening to somebody reading somebody else's story. I kept thinking to myself, I wrote this? How bizarre. This
Oh,
came, this came out of me. This is really weird, you know. So it was
it's
really
almost like he's doing like radio almost or something.
yeah, it was really interesting. I mean, it was fun listening to him do them. Very, very, very entertaining.
Definitely. I didn't know he did it in like accents and stuff. Wow. That's
Well,
intense.
I didn't ask him really to do them in accents. He only affects one actual accent in all the stories, but and only for a little bit. But it has to do with just his tone. Just the pitch of his voice, the phrasing, that kind of thing.
Ooh.
It's just
Does Ed Kemper do accents? Probably not.
yeah. He's getting stuck.
I don't know what's going on with the internet and stuff lately. If hers was doing it too,
Yeah,
probably Russia, China. Tapping the line, tapping the line. But I bet Ed Kemper does it in a creepy monotone voice, like it's always the same, like for everyone. I killed my mother, and never mind, I won't tell that story. But I saw a documentary on him once, and it was crazy. Like it was just one of those weird things. I don't even know why I watched it, and I didn't know what I was watching. It was, I don't want to get into it, but he's creepy. Did you ever see that? What was that? Mindhunter show on Netflix?
yeah, I
Okay.
think so. Yeah,
You see them all?
no, I didn't see them all.
The first one was what was it like? I don't remember who the killer was in the first one. I know it was different killers. The second one was about Wayne Williams. You know that story?
Yes, I do.
I remember that as a kid. That was around
Yeah, that was
Atlanta and
pretty.
all that. The whole second season was
Yeah,
about Wayne Williams. It's definitely a trip. They don't know if they're doing a third season, which is weird because it does well, but David Fincher did it. Hope they do, but the weird part of it was all during it. They show the BTK killer doing stuff, and they haven't got to a point of catching him yet or anything. And I'm sure they interview him eventually, but that's creepy for sure. Like they actually show scenes where he goes into houses, and it's bad. It's a good show. Hopefully they bring it back on some level. I need to read the book. Do you ever read the book?
of what?
That FBI Mindhunters book, the real book, the little fiction book, the
Yeah, yeah,
paperback.
yeah. A long time ago.
Yeah, I haven't read it though. It's one of those like, do I need to read that? Probably got some sick stuff in it. A little too close. I don't want them rubbing off on me or anything. The sickos. Ed Gein's in it. No, he's not. That's too far. Too far. Too far gone. What about the? We got about 5 minutes. You hear the creepy Gary Busey stuff?
Creepy Harry Busey.
Gary Busey.
Yeah, I heard some creepy Gary Busey stuff, but I don't remember the specifics.
He went to a horror convention and started like filling up chicks. Like
Oh,
doing sick.
really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And then
That's what it was.
he went to a park and pleasured himself and smoked a cigar with his like pants down.
In front of people?
Yeah, just out like in the public. Like
Well, whoa, like, so I'm assuming they arrested him and shit.
yeah, they
Oops,
arrested
sorry.
him. Can you imagine that? Gary, that's scary. His poor son, Jake, or whatever his name is. I think his brain injury has succeeded its brain injuriness or something.
Yeah.
He's
Well,
always been kind of creepy.
what is he? What did he have a brain injury of from?
He had a bad motorcycle accident.
Oh, I see.
That was bad, and it always made him. But no excuse. He's definitely gone off the rails. What is he at a horror convention for? I know he's on some weird show where like I saw it on my mom's TV where you switch wives and for a week or something weird, like one of those reality shows, and he was like all Jesus-y and everything. And it was two like religious dudes, and they switched wives. And it wasn't. I don't think they like shagged the wives or anything, but it was like you just kept the wife with your family for a week. I didn't watch the whole thing. It was like when I was walking to the restroom. I walked by it when I was going to the restroom and stopped. Like, there's Gary Busey, creepy. And he's like on a bench talking about Jesus, and he swapped his wife with this dude, and it's a reality show where they like film you while you swap your wives with someone. And it was two religious dudes, like icons. Nuts, probably. But the other guy had some weird stuff in the past that was controversial with sex or something. It was weird. I don't know what the hell it was. Probably that TLC where they have the guy with the big nuts that sits on it like a beanbag. Elephantitis show. But sick shows. I never watched that one, but I saw a commercial for it. I was traumatized. It's just a dude with elephantitis, like sitting on it like a beanbag. And they had a whole show on that, like the Learning Channel or something. One of those sick channels. But I don't watch them. My mom, I'll watch it. I'll see it on TV when I walk by. But anywho, I hope none of you get elephantitis. That's probably something I shouldn't have brought up. But nonetheless, I hope everybody has a good weekend. They're closing out. I'm in this metal chair. My back is like crippled. I need to go lay down after being in it. I had to move the blue chair out of here to make room for something. So now I'm in this metal one. I got to find a better chair. It'll get you. But everybody, I hope you survive Mercury retrograde. And we'll see you next week. Thanks, Wham. Thanks, JoJo. Thanks, everybody. Have a good weekend.
Bye.
Good night, everybody. Don't watch the Learn Channel.